My daughter's husband treated me like I was some clueless old man who barely understood how the world worked anymore. He assumed I was slow, forgetful, easy to outsmart. What he did not realize was that I noticed far more than he ever imagined. More than once, he had slipped into my bedroom late at night when he thought I was sound asleep, quietly digging through my drawers and personal belongings, searching for anything that looked valuable or important. But one night in particular changed everything. When he pulled open my desk drawer to grab the keys to the safe, his expression shifted in seconds. First, his face drained of color until it looked pale as chalk. Then it took on a sickly yellow hue, like an overcooked egg yolk. Whatever he saw inside that drawer rattled him deeply. It altered the course of his life in ways he could not yet understand. As for me, lying there in the dark, fully awake and aware, I simply smiled to myself. The tension surfaced again the very next evening. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth when Ethan's voice sliced through what had been a calm, ordinary dinner conversation. "So, Mark," he said casually, "that safe you keep upstairs, what kind of lock does it have?" My daughter Emily nearly choked on her water. She coughed hard and stared at him. "Ethan, why would you even ask that?" He ignored her reaction entirely. His eyes stayed locked on mine, unblinking, waiting. There was something sharp and predatory in his gaze that made my chest tighten. I lowered my fork slowly, deliberately, giving myself a moment to think. "I was just curious about home security," he continued, flashing that rehearsed, easy smile. "You know, with all the break-ins happening around here lately." "What break-ins?" I asked. I had lived in this quiet neighborhood outside Dayton, Ohio, for nearly 15 years. The most dramatic event we had experienced was Mrs. Calder's cat getting stuck in a maple tree a few weeks earlier. Ethan waved his hand dismissively. "Oh, you probably do not hear about them. The police tend to keep things quiet so people do not panic." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on my dining table like he owned the place. "But a man your age, living alone in a house this large, you must have serious security measures in place." Emily shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Dad has always been careful about locking things up." "Sure," Ethan replied, but his tone sharpened. "But what about insurance?" He paused, then added, "I mean, if something happened to you, God forbid, Emily would need to know where all the important things are, right?" The room suddenly felt tighter, heavier, like the walls had crept closer. I studied Ethan closely. I noticed the way his pupils widened slightly when he spoke about my hypothetical death. I noticed how his fingers tapped impatiently against the table when I did not answer right away. "I keep everything organized," I said at last. "Emily knows what she needs to know." "But does she know about the key?" The question lingered in the air like smoke that refused to clear. Emily looked back and forth between us, her forehead wrinkling with confusion. "What key?" she asked. Ethan's smile stretched wider. "The one in your dad's bedroom drawer, the one that—" "How do you know anything about a key in my bedroom?" I interrupted, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. For a brief second, his mask slipped. I caught a glimpse of something cold and calculating beneath the surface before his concerned son-in-law routine snapped back into place. "I had a terrible headache last week," he said smoothly. "Emily told me to check your bathroom cabinet for aspirin. I accidentally opened the wrong drawer first. I did not mean to invade your privacy." Emily nodded quickly. "I remember that headache. You were miserable all night. I remembered that day, too. Ethan had been upstairs for nearly half an hour, claiming stomach problems after dinner, long enough to do much more than accidentally open the wrong drawer. "The aspirin has always been in the medicine cabinet," I said quietly. Ethan's jaw tightened just slightly. I must have been really out of it from the pain. After that, the conversation limped forward awkwardly, but he kept circling back. Questions about my bank accounts, questions about who else had keys to the house, questions about my daily routines and when I usually left or returned home. Each question felt like someone pressing on a bruise, testing how much pressure I could take. When dinner finally ended, Emily stood up quickly and began clearing the table. "I will take care of the dishes tonight, Dad. You cooked." "I do not mind," I replied, already stacking plates. Cleaning up was part of my routine, something grounding. That evening, I needed the familiar motions more than ever. "Come on, sweetheart," Ethan said, placing his hand on Emily's shoulder. "Let your dad handle his kitchen. We should get some rest." They headed upstairs, and I heard their bedroom door close. As I washed the dishes, I replayed every word Ethan had said. The way he knew about a key he should never have known existed. The casual way he mentioned my death and Emily's future inheritance. My hands worked on autopilot, wash, rinse, dry, while my mind cataloged every warning sign I had ignored over the past 3 weeks. Ethan's unemployment story that never quite made sense. His constant curiosity about my finances. The way he studied my house like someone memorizing blueprints. I finished the last glass and hung the dish towel neatly on its hook. The kitchen sparkled under the overhead light, restored to perfect order. But something essential had shifted. The house no longer felt secure. It felt exposed. Upstairs, muffled voices drifted through the ceiling, then went silent. That was when I decided it was time to see what other surprises might be waiting for me inside my own home. As I climbed the stairs, the first thing I noticed was my bedroom door. It stood slightly open, maybe 2 inches, a thin slice of darkness visible through the gap. I stopped at the top step, gripping the banister tightly. That door had been closed when I went down to dinner. I always closed it. It was a habit built over 40 years of living alone, broken only recently by my daughter moving back in. But Emily and Ethan were staying in the guest room at the end of the hall. There was absolutely no reason for anyone to be inside my bedroom. I stood frozen at the top of the stairs for a full half-minute, listening as hard as I could. There was no sound coming from the guest room, no footsteps, no whispers, no movement anywhere on the second floor. All I heard was the quiet settling of an older house at night and the steady thump of my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. I slowly pushed my bedroom door open, bracing myself for the familiar creak. It never came. I had oiled the hinges years ago, and they opened in complete silence. Still, the moment I stepped inside, the room felt wrong. Walking into my own bedroom felt less like coming home and more like stepping into a crime scene. At first glance, everything appeared normal. The bed was neatly made, the corners tucked just the way I liked them. My reading glasses rested on the nightstand exactly where I had placed them earlier. The lamp sat at the same angle it always did. But my eyes were trained by decades of careful habits, and they caught the inconsistencies immediately. The closet door stood open by about 4 inches. I never left it like that. Never. Even a small gap like that would have bothered me enough to get out of bed and close it before sleeping. Then I noticed the dresser. The drawers were not sitting quite right anymore. The second drawer from the top, the one where I kept important documents, had been shoved closed without care. A corner of a manila folder stuck out, bright yellow against the dark wood. My stomach tightened. I walked over and pulled the drawer all the way out. The folders inside had clearly been handled. Someone had gone through them and tried to put them back in order, but they had not done it precisely. Bank statements were mixed with insurance paperwork. Documents that never touched each other were now side by side. My will, which I always kept tucked safely in the back folder, had been shifted toward the front, and the small brass key I kept taped beneath the drawer's inner lip was gone. I checked again, sliding my fingers slowly along the underside of the wood where the tape had always been. Nothing. I checked a second time just to be sure. Still nothing. The key that opened my safe, the same safe Ethan had asked about so casually over dinner, had been found and taken. My hands began to shake, not from fear, but from pure anger. This was not random. This was not someone snooping out of curiosity. Someone had entered my most private space and searched it deliberately, methodically, looking for very specific things. This was someone who knew exactly what to look for and had taken the time to find it. I crossed the room to the safe, a compact but heavy model bolted inside my walk-in closet. The digital keypad still worked, but that no longer mattered. Ethan now had the manual override key. Standing there, surrounded by decades of my belongings, I felt completely exposed. How long had he been planning this? How many times had he slipped into my room while Emily and I were downstairs, quietly inventorying my life like merchandise on shelves? The violation went far beyond theft. It felt deeply personal. Someone had handled my private papers, read my financial records, touched things that were never meant for anyone else's eyes. The careful boundaries I had built around my life had been crossed with deliberate precision. But Ethan had made one critical mistake. He assumed I would not notice. He assumed I was just another distracted, trusting old man who would never pay attention to details. He was wrong. I slid the dresser drawer closed slowly, leaving everything exactly as I had found it. If Ethan believed he was operating in secret, I needed him to keep believing that. Let him think his intrusion had gone unnoticed. Let him move forward with whatever plan he was putting together, because now I understood exactly what I was dealing with. This was not about unemployment. It was not about temporary money trouble. This was calculated theft, planned over weeks by someone who had studied my habits and vulnerabilities while sleeping down the hall with my daughter. I turned off the bedroom light and went through my usual nighttime routine. Every movement felt different now, as if I were being watched. I wondered if Ethan was listening. I wondered if he knew I had discovered his search. As I pulled back the covers, one clear thought settled in my mind. Tomorrow, I would begin collecting evidence. Tonight, I would lie awake and plan. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was up against. Sleep never came. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts replaying everything I had uncovered. Every small noise made my muscles tense. The house shifting, the wind brushing the trees outside, the faint hum of the refrigerator on the first floor. At 11:47 that night, according to the glowing red numbers on my bedside clock, I heard movement downstairs. Soft footsteps crossed the living room floor, not Emily's light step. These were heavier, slower, more deliberate. Ethan. I stayed perfectly still, controlling my breathing as the sounds moved toward the front of the house. Then, faint but unmistakable through the thin floors, I heard his voice. "Yeah, it is me. Everyone is asleep." He was on the phone, making a quiet call in the middle of the night, speaking in a whisper he assumed no one could hear. I eased myself out of bed, careful not to let the mattress make a sound. The hardwood floor was cold beneath my bare feet as I moved toward the heating vent that connected my bedroom to the living room below. In this old house, sound traveled through the ductwork in strange, unpredictable ways. "The old man is definitely loaded." Ethan's voice floated up through the vents, clearer now than before. I saw bank statements, investment accounts, portfolios, the whole picture. This is serious money. My blood turned ice cold. We are talking. He was not acting alone. "Tomorrow night," Ethan went on, his tone confident, almost relaxed, "Emily has her book club. Every Tuesday, 7 to 9. That gives us a perfect window." I reached for my phone on the nightstand, my hand shaking as I opened the voice recording application. Whatever he said next, I needed proof. "I already grabbed the safe key," he continued. "Took it earlier while they were eating dinner. The old fool keeps everything important in there. Cash, jewelry, probably more banking information." My thumb hit record. "Look," Ethan said, his voice growing sharper, more animated. "I know you are nervous about the timing, but my gambling debts are not disappearing. Those people are not exactly patient, if you know what I mean. This has to happen now." Gambling debts. That single phrase snapped everything into place. The urgency, the calculation, the willingness to betray my daughter without hesitation. Ethan was not just greedy. He was desperate, cornered by his own recklessness. "Mark is just some lonely old widower," he scoffed. "Probably grateful for the company. He has no clue what is coming. Hell, he was asking me about home security at dinner tonight. Practically handed me everything I needed." Rage surged through my chest, hot and steady. The way he reduced me to a caricature, an easy mark, a stereotype. I forced myself to stay silent, to keep listening, to keep recording. "The best part is, he will never suspect family," Ethan continued. "Even if he notices something missing, Emily will convince him he just misplaced it. You know how old people get about their memory." Old people. I was 66, not senile. My memory was sharp enough to capture every word of this conversation. "By Thursday, we will be gone," he said confidently. "I will tell Emily I got a job offer out of state, something urgent. We will be packed and out before the old man understands what hit him." There was a pause as he listened to whoever was on the other end of the line. Then he laughed. It was a low, careless sound that made my skin crawl. "Yeah, maybe he should have been more careful about who he let into his house. Life lesson, right?" The call ended. I heard him move around downstairs for another minute, likely checking doors or windows. Then came the soft, deliberate sound of footsteps on the stairs. I stopped the recording instantly and slid my phone beneath my pillow. My bedroom door was still slightly open from his earlier search. I had not dared close it. Through the narrow gap, I watched his shadow glide past in the hallway. The guest room door opened and shut quietly. For a long time afterward, I lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, processing everything I had just learned. Ethan had gambling debts serious enough to involve dangerous people. He had an accomplice. He planned to rob me the following night while Emily was at book club. And once he did, He intended to disappear immediately, dragging my daughter with him into whatever disaster he had created. Suddenly, the violation of my bedroom felt almost insignificant compared to the larger betrayal. Ethan was not just stealing from me. He was using Emily as camouflage, manipulating her trust and love to shield his crime. But he had made a fatal miscalculation. He believed I was helpless, confused, easy prey. He had no idea that I had spent 30 years working as an insurance investigator before I retired. I had dealt with fraud, theft, and desperation in every form imaginable. I had listened to liars who thought they were smarter than everyone else. I had watched careful plans unravel because someone underestimated the wrong person. Ethan wanted to play games with an old man. Fine. We would see how clever he really was. Lying there in the dark, with his recorded confession resting inches from my head, my thoughts drifted back to how all of this began. 3 weeks earlier, the morning my quiet Tuesday was shattered by Emily's phone call. I had been sitting at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper, my coffee slowly going cold beside me, when my phone rang. Seeing Emily's name on the screen always made me smile, but the moment I heard her voice, I knew something was wrong. She sounded strained, frightened. "Dad?" she said softly. "I know it is early, but—" She stopped and I could hear her fighting back tears. "Ethan lost his job last month," she finally said. "We have been trying to manage, but we are behind on the mortgage and—" "How far behind?" I asked immediately, already reaching for my checkbook without thinking. 3 months, she whispered. "Dad, I hate to even ask, but could we maybe stay with you for a while, just until Ethan finds something new?" The relief in her voice when I said yes broke my heart. My little girl, 32 years old, proud, stubborn, and only asking for help when she had no other option. Of course she could come home. Of course I would help her. And yet, even then, something about Ethan's situation had bothered me. Emily said he had worked at the same company for 8 years. That kind of job did not just disappear overnight. Good performance reviews, steady employment history. According to Emily, the layoffs had come out of nowhere and caught everyone by surprise. Still, when I pressed her gently for details, her answers never quite lined up. She said Ethan handled their finances. He was managing the job search. He told her everything was under control. She trusted him to work it out. Looking back now, I know I should have pushed harder. I should have asked more questions. I should not have let it go so easily. 3 days later, they arrived with a rented moving truck and far too many boxes for what was supposed to be a temporary stay. Emily wrapped her arms around me on the front step, holding on tight, tears sliding down her cheeks as she whispered, "Thank you," again and again. Ethan, on the other hand, was distant, polite but cool. His handshake was firm and brief. His eyes never stopped moving, already taking inventory of my home. "Nice place, Mark," he said, strolling through my living room like an appraiser. "Must be worth a lot in this market." At the time, I brushed it off as idle curiosity. Now I understood he had been calculating, measuring, planning from the very first moment. During that first week, I went out of my way to make them comfortable. I cleared space in the guest closet. I adjusted my routines, reshaping a life built for one person into something that fit 3. Emily settled in easily. She knew the house. She knew my habits. Ethan, however, asked constant questions about the neighborhood watch schedule, about which neighbors stayed home during the day, about my banking habits, my shopping routines, whether I ever kept cash in the house. On the surface, they sounded harmless, questions from a man trying to adjust. In reality, they were anything but innocent. I remembered the morning he offered to drive me to the bank. "Save yourself the trip," he had said. "I need to update my address for unemployment anyway." At the bank, he lingered near the teller window while I made my deposit, casually asking about account types, about whether I used a safe deposit box. Those were warning signs I ignored because I wanted to trust my daughter's husband, because Emily loved him and I loved Emily. The gambling should have been obvious, too. Ethan's phone rang constantly, calls he always took in private, stepping outside or ducking into another room. He claimed they were potential employers, networking contacts. But I noticed how his mood changed afterward, the tension in his shoulders, the restless pacing. For 2 weeks, mail addressed to Ethan had been arriving at my house. Credit card companies, collection agencies. At the time, I assumed it was routine, address updates after losing a job. Now I understood what they really were. Final notices, demands, warnings. Emily knew none of this. She trusted Ethan completely. When he told her he was handling their finances, she believed him. When he said the job market was brutal but he had leads, she stood by him without question. She had no idea her husband was drowning in gambling debt, no idea her childhood home was being studied like a target. My kind, trusting daughter was the perfect cover. That realization pulled me back to the present, to my dark bedroom and the weight of Ethan's recorded confession resting on my phone. In 12 hours, he planned to rob me. In 36 hours, he planned to vanish with Emily, dragging her into the wreckage of his lies and debts. But he had made one catastrophic mistake. He assumed I was lonely, weak, easy to fool. I was not lonely. I was careful. I was observant. And I had 30 years of experience dealing with people who believed they were smarter than everyone else. Ethan wanted to steal from me that night. Fine, let him try. He was about to learn that some old men bite back. I woke at 6:30 a.m., exactly as I always did. The recording on my phone felt unreal, like proof of a bad dream. But the timestamp told the truth. 12:47 a.m., Ethan's voice clear and confident, laying out his plan to rob me. Downstairs, I started the coffee maker and moved through my usual breakfast routine. Eggs, toast, orange juice, everything exactly as it had been for the past 3 weeks. Emily appeared first, wrapped in her robe, yawning. I smiled warmly at her. "Morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" "Like a baby," she said softly. "Thank you again for letting us stay here, Dad." Ethan came down about 20 minutes later, hair still damp from the shower. He looked rested, confident, like a man who believed everything was under control. "Beautiful morning," he said, settling into his chair. "What does everyone have planned today?" I set his coffee down carefully. "Oh, nothing special. I might run a few errands later." His eyes sharpened just a fraction. "What kind of errands?" "Just odds and ends," I replied calmly. "Hardware store, maybe the bank." I watched him closely. A small muscle jumped near his left eye. "Nothing exciting," I added. "The bank?" Ethan leaned forward. "Everything okay financially?" Emily laughed lightly. "Dad has always liked checking his accounts in person. Old habits." "Not paranoid?" I said mildly. "Now, careful. You cannot be too careful these days." Ethan nodded a little too eagerly. "Absolutely. Identity theft. Online scams. It is a jungle out there for someone your age." Someone your age. There it was again. That casual dismissal dressed up as concern. "Speaking of being careful," he continued, "I have been thinking about your home security. This neighborhood seems quiet, but you never really know." "It is perfectly safe," Emily said quickly. "Dad has lived here for 15 years without any trouble." But Ethan was not listening to his wife. His attention stayed fixed on me. "Still," he said, voice smooth, "a man living alone, valuable things in the house. It pays to be prepared." "You mentioned that safe upstairs earlier," Ethan said, leaning back slightly. "Is that where you keep important documents?" I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the pause stretch just long enough to feel deliberate. "Some things, yes." "What about cash?" he pressed. "You know, if the banks went down or something unexpected happened, it is smart to keep emergency money close." The audacity of it was almost impressive. He sat at my breakfast table, eating food I had cooked, casually asking me to list my assets as if it were harmless conversation. "I have what I need," I replied evenly. Ethan switched tactics. "You mentioned last week that you are a heavy sleeper. That is good. I worry about older people who cannot get proper rest." I had never said any such thing, but I nodded anyway. "Oh, yes. Once I am asleep, I am completely out, especially lately. I have been exhausted in the evenings." "That is normal at your age," he said smoothly. "Your body needs more rest." Emily shot him a sharp look. "Ethan, that is rude." "No, no," I said quickly, waving it off. "He is right. I usually take something to help me sleep, knocks me out until morning." I saw it instantly. His shoulders loosened. His posture relaxed. Perfect. Let him believe I would be unconscious and helpless that night. "Well," I said, standing and gathering plates, "I should let you two plan your day. I will probably turn in early tonight. All this family activity has me more tired than usual." "That sounds perfect, Dad," Emily said warmly. "You deserve the rest." Ethan carried plates into the kitchen with me, and I noticed his eyes flick toward the stairs, toward my bedroom, already measuring distances and timing. "You know," he added casually, "I might stay up late tonight and watch some television in the living room. I am more of a night owl." "Of course you are," I thought. I smiled and nodded. "Make yourself comfortable. The remote is on the coffee table." After breakfast, Ethan announced he needed to make phone calls about job prospects. Emily decided to organize their belongings in the guest room. That was my opening. "I think I will run those errands now," I said. "You two enjoy some quiet time together." As I backed out of the driveway, I glanced up and saw Ethan watching from an upstairs window. Not the guest room, my bedroom. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Tonight could not come soon enough. The hardware store was my first stop. I needed supplies, but more importantly, I needed space to think through every detail. Ethan had made his intentions painfully clear over breakfast. That night, while I supposedly slept deeply thanks to medication, he planned to enter my bedroom, find the key he believed was still there, and open my safe. Clean, simple, the perfect crime against a trusting old man. Except the key was no longer there. I had moved it at 5 that morning after lying awake all night replaying his phone call. The small brass key now sat safely in my kitchen junk drawer, buried beneath rubber bands, old batteries, and twist ties. Ethan could tear my dresser apart if he wanted. He would find nothing. But that alone was not enough. I wanted him caught in the act. I wanted him exposed, humiliated, revealed for exactly what he was. I wanted evidence so undeniable that even Emily could not explain it away. In the party supply aisle of the hardware store, I found exactly what I needed. A small spring-loaded confetti cannon, the kind used for gender reveal parties, designed to create maximum mess with minimal effort. Perfect. I also grabbed a bag of ultrafine glitter, the kind that sticks to everything and never truly disappears. Silver and gold. If Ethan wanted to play the thief, he might as well look the part. When I returned home, the house was empty. A note from Emily sat on the kitchen counter. "Gone grocery shopping with Ethan. Back by 2 p.m. Love you?" Perfect. I had 3 uninterrupted hours. In my basement workshop, I carefully dismantled the confetti cannon. The design was elegantly simple, a spring-loaded plunger that activated under pressure. I removed the harmless paper confetti and replaced it with my glitter mixture, adding just enough to thoroughly coat someone without causing harm. The tricky part was calibration. I needed it to fire when Ethan opened my dresser drawer and reached inside with intention, not from a casual bump or glance. After several test runs using a wooden spoon, I found the precise sensitivity. Installation required care. I placed the modified device inside my dresser drawer, positioning it so the trigger would activate only when someone reached toward the back, exactly where the real key had once been hidden. To anyone glancing inside, it looked normal. Old photographs, spare buttons, random keepsakes, but reach in with purpose, search with intent, and surprise. I tested the setup 3 times using a ruler to mimic Ethan's searching motion. Each test worked perfectly, launching a shimmering cloud directly where an intruder's face and hands would be. The device reset easily, ready for its real performance. Finally, I staged the deception. Near the front of the drawer, I placed a decoy key, an old luggage key, similar enough at a glance to fool someone in a hurry. Ethan would see it immediately. He would reach for it with confidence. And that was when my trap would spring. The brilliance of the plan was psychological. Ethan was counting on silence, speed, and success. In his mind, this was a clean operation, a quick, quiet theft with no complications. What he had not planned for was a glitter detonation that would brand him just as unmistakably as a die pack marks a bank robber. By 1:45 in the afternoon, everything was ready. The dresser drawer looked ordinary, harmless. The trap was armed, waiting. Ethan would walk into my bedroom that night expecting to find a helpless old man fast asleep. Instead, he was about to meet a very loud, very visible version of justice. I heard car doors slam in the driveway. Emily and Ethan were back from their shopping trip, probably feeling domestic and relaxed, playing house like everything was normal. Ethan had no idea that the crime scene he was planning to use had already been transformed into a trap. I closed the dresser drawer carefully and headed downstairs, putting on my warmest, most harmless smile. Tonight was going to be interesting. After lunch, I made my announcement. "I need to step out for a quick errand. I will not be long." Emily looked up from unpacking groceries. "Do you need help with anything, Dad?" "No," I said lightly. "Just grabbing something from the electronics store. You two relax. You have already done enough shopping for one day." Ethan barely looked up from his phone, but I caught the flicker in his eyes. Interest. The old man leaving the house alone. Routine confirmed. House temporarily unguarded. At the electronics store, a young clerk named Marcus greeted me. He did not even blink when I explained that I wanted a security camera for my bedroom. "Break-ins around your area?" he asked. "Something like that," I replied. "I need something small, wireless, with good night vision." Marcus showed me several options. I chose a compact model that synced directly to my smartphone, featured motion detection, and offered up to 8 hours of battery life. It was smaller than a deck of cards and came with magnetic mounting options. "You will want to test the placement," Marcus advised. "The app lets you see exactly what the camera sees in real time." "Perfect," I said. I paid in cash and drove home, the box sitting on the passenger seat like a secret weapon. When I returned, Emily and Ethan were watching television in the living room. They looked comfortable, normal, like an ordinary couple staying with family, not two people standing on the edge of a crime. "I am just going to rest for a bit," I said, heading upstairs. "All this running around has worn me out." In my bedroom, I closed the door and got to work. The camera had to capture everything: Ethan entering the room, approaching the dresser, opening the drawer, and the glitter explosion itself. At the same time, it had to remain completely invisible. I tested several spots using the phone app. On top of the bookshelf, the angle was wrong. Behind the lamp, too obvious. Finally, I found the perfect location, tucked between books on my nightstand, angled to cover both the dresser and the center of the room. The magnetic mount snapped into place effortlessly, and the camera's black casing blended seamlessly with the book spines. Unless someone was actively searching for surveillance equipment, it was invisible. I spent 20 minutes fine-tuning the angle through the app, ensuring full coverage. The motion detection was sensitive enough to activate when someone entered the room, but not so sensitive that normal house noises would trigger it. Battery life mattered. The camera needed to stay alive until Ethan made his move, possibly 8 or 10 hours away. I switched it to motion-activated recording to conserve power, then tested the night vision by turning off the lights. The infrared image was sharp and clear. Ethan's face would be unmistakable when the trap went off. I tested the audio as well. The microphone was sensitive enough to capture whispered speech. Desperate people often talk to themselves. If Ethan said anything incriminating, I wanted it recorded. The setup was simple and elegant. Ethan would enter my room expecting darkness and silence. Instead, he would be recorded from the moment he crossed the threshold. The camera would capture his search, his confidence when he spotted the decoy key, his reach into the drawer, and the explosive moment of revelation. Visual evidence, audio evidence, physical evidence, all in one neat package. I adjusted a few books to better hide the camera, then stepped back. The room looked completely normal, just an old man's bedroom, ready for an early night's sleep. Downstairs, I could hear Emily and Ethan talking softly, planning their evening, no doubt. Ethan was probably counting the hours until his window opened. He had no idea that window had become a trapdoor. I checked my phone one last time. The camera feed was clear. Recording was active. Battery was full. Everything was ready. That night, Ethan was going to show his true self. And thanks to modern technology, every second of it would be preserved in high-definition detail. Dinner passed quietly. Emily chatted about small changes in the neighborhood. Ethan checked his phone repeatedly. I played my role perfectly. The tired grandfather ready to call it an early night after a long day. By 8 o'clock, we were settled in the living room. Emily curled up with her book. I sat in my usual chair and made a show of rubbing my temples. "Long day," I said softly. "I think I will turn in early tonight." Ethan looked up immediately. "Actually, Mark," he said, his tone carefully casual, I was hoping we could share a drink first. You know, a little father and son-in-law bonding. The suggestion came out of nowhere. Too smooth, too calculated. "That is sweet," Emily said without looking up from her book. "You two should spend more time together," Emily said gently. "I was actually thinking about that bottle of Macallan I noticed in your kitchen," Ethan added smoothly. "Premium stuff. Perfect for a nightcap." I kept my face calm, but inside I was almost impressed. He had clearly rehearsed this. The timing, the casual tone, the deliberate mention of expensive whiskey, none of it was spontaneous. "I appreciate the thought," I said evenly, "but I am on medication that does not mix well with alcohol." Ethan's smile tightened just a fraction. "Come on, one small glass will not hurt. We are practically family." I really should not drink at all. "Dad is right," Emily said. "The doctor was very clear about his blood pressure medication." But Ethan was not done. "What about just a toast then? A tiny sip?" He hesitated, searching for the right sentiment. "To family." The persistence told me everything. A normal person would have backed off after the first refusal. Ethan was pushing because he needed me to ingest something specific, something that would make sure I slept deeply that night. "I will tell you what," he said, standing. "I will pour myself a glass and we can just sit and talk. No pressure for you to drink." Before I could object, he was already in the kitchen. I heard cabinet doors open, the clink of glass against glass. When he came back, he carried 2 tumblers, one filled with amber liquid, the other empty. "Changed my mind," he said, sitting down. "I poured you just a splash for the toast, barely a teaspoon." He extended the second glass toward me. The whiskey caught the lamplight, warm and inviting, but after 30 years investigating insurance fraud, I knew one thing well. Desperate people always got sloppy. "Ethan, I really cannot." "One tiny sip," he insisted. "Emily, tell your father one sip will not kill him." Emily looked between us, clearly sensing tension she could not quite place. "If Dad says no, maybe you should respect that." Ethan's jaw clenched. For a brief second, his mask dropped completely. I saw frustration, calculation, and something dangerously close to panic flash across his face. "You know what?" I said, rising slowly. "I am more tired than I realized. I think I will take one of my sleeping pills and call it a night." His entire posture shifted. "Sleeping pills?" "Doctor prescribed them last month," I said calmly. "Strong ones. Once I take one, I am completely out until morning." Relief washed over his face so fast he could not hide it. "That sounds perfect. You really need your rest." "Sweet dreams, Dad," Emily said, kissing my cheek. "See you in the morning." I deliberately made a show of climbing the stairs slowly, gripping the railing like a man struggling with fatigue. At the top, I turned back. "Do not stay up too late," I said. "Ethan, help yourself to anything in the kitchen." "Thanks, Mark. Sleep well." In my bedroom, I went through the motions, changing clothes, brushing my teeth, pulling back the covers. Then I quietly checked the camera angle one last time and confirmed the glitter trap was armed and ready. I turned off the light and lay down fully clothed, positioning myself so I could see the hallway through my slightly open door. Downstairs, the television murmured softly. Ethan and Emily spoke in low voices. Then I heard Emily's footsteps on the stairs, followed by the guest room door closing. Ethan stayed downstairs, waiting, watching the clock, calculating how long my sleeping pill should take to work. I checked my phone. 9:47 p.m. The camera feed showed my empty bedroom in crisp night vision clarity. Everything was in place. Now, all I had to do was wait. At 2:43 in the morning, I heard the first faint creak on the stairs. I had been lying motionless for hours, breathing slow and steady, positioned so I could see the hallway through the narrow gap in my door. My phone displayed the live camera feed. My bedroom, silent and waiting, rendered in perfect infrared detail. Ethan moved like someone who had studied this house carefully. He avoided the steps that groaned, stepping only where the wood stayed quiet. 3 weeks of living here had taught him every sound my home could make. The floorboard outside my bedroom whispered under his weight. Then he stopped, listening, making sure his plan had worked. I kept my breathing deep and even. This was the most important performance of my life. My daughter's future depended on it. The door handle turned with agonizing slowness. Ethan's silhouette appeared in the doorway, backlit by the faint glow of the hall nightlight. He stood there for a full 30 seconds, watching my supposedly unconscious body. Satisfied, he slipped inside. Now confident, now predatory, he moved with the ease of a man who believed himself invisible and untouchable. His dark clothes blended into the shadows, but I could track him by the subtle shift of darkness and sound. He walked straight to the dresser with absolute certainty. A man who believed every step had already been won. 3 full weeks of quiet surveillance had taught Ethan exactly where everything was. He knew which drawer mattered. He knew what he believed was hidden there. In his mind, that small brass key was about to unlock my safe, my security, and my life savings all at once. I watched him stop directly in front of the dresser. His movements were precise, confident. His hand reached for the second drawer, the one he thought held the answer to all his problems, along with the surprise I had carefully prepared for him. The drawer slid open without resistance. For a brief, shining moment, his entire posture radiated victory. He had found it. He leaned in, reaching deep inside, fingers searching eagerly for the brass key he was certain would solve everything. Then the confetti cannon detonated. Boom! The sound was magnificent. Somewhere between a party popper and a small cannon, sharp and celebratory all at once. Silver and gold glitter exploded outward in a dense, shimmering cloud, blasting Ethan from head to toe. The noise echoed through the house like festive gunfire. He staggered backward, swearing loudly as glitter rained down into his hair, across his clothes, and onto his stunned face. He looked like he had been attacked by an arts and crafts apocalypse, transformed in an instant into a walking disco ball. "What the hell?" he gasped, clawing uselessly at the glitter, clinging stubbornly to every surface. That was my cue. I executed my awakening with practiced precision, sitting up abruptly and filling my voice with confusion. "What on earth?" I called out, reaching for my bedside lamp. "What was that noise?" Light flooded the room. Ethan froze beside the open dresser, glittered from head to toe, clutching the decoy key I had planted as bait. "Ethan?" I blinked slowly, putting on my best bewildered expression. "What are you doing in my bedroom?" He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. With each movement, glitter drifted from his hair like holiday snow. I heard a noise," he stammered. "I thought someone was breaking in." "Breaking in?" I glanced around the room as if trying to make sense of things. "And you ended up sparkling?" Ethan looked down at himself, finally registering the full scope of what had happened. He resembled a rejected Christmas ornament, silver and gold clinging to him from collar to cuffs. There was some kind of trap, he said weakly. A trap? I tilted my head. In my bedroom? Footsteps sounded in the hallway, fast, bare. Emily, jolted awake by the explosion, was rushing toward us. Panic flashed across Ethan's face. There was no story that explained being covered in glitter while standing at his father-in-law's dresser at 3 a.m. Mark, what is going on? Emily's voice carried both worry and growing alarm. Ethan tried to speak, but nothing convincing came out. He was caught, quite literally glitter-handed, in the middle of betraying our family. I allowed myself the faintest internal smile as her footsteps reached the doorway. Justice, it turned out, was extremely sparkly. "Dad, are you okay?" Emily appeared in the doorway, hurriedly tying her robe closed. Then she stopped short, staring at the scene in front of her, me, sitting up in bed, apparently confused and concerned. Ethan, standing beside my open dresser drawer, completely coated in shimmering confetti like he had fallen into a craft bin. "What in the world?" Emily whispered. "Ethan, why do you look like a Christmas decoration?" His mouth opened and closed without sound. Glitter drifted from his hair and shoulders, settling onto my carpet like metallic snow. "There was a noise," he said finally, his voice tight. "I came to check on your father." "At 3 a.m? Emily's tone sharpened. "And you somehow ended up covered in glitter?" "Some kind of security device," Ethan said quickly, brushing at his clothes in growing desperation. "It went off when I opened the drawer." Emily's eyes moved from Ethan to the open dresser, then slowly to me. "Dad," she asked carefully, "do you have security devices in your furniture?" I kept my expression mild and confused. "Not that I know of, sweetheart. I was fast asleep until that explosion woke me up." Emily turned back to Ethan. "Then why were you opening his dresser drawer?" There was a new edge in her voice now. Suspicion. Protection. Ethan's explanation began to unravel in real time. "I was looking for something to help you sleep. You were tossing and turning, and I thought Mark might have some extra sleep aids." "Sleep aids?" Emily repeated slowly. "In my father's bedroom dresser?" "I thought maybe." Ethan gestured weakly toward the drawer, sending another cascade of glitter onto the floor. "Ethan," I said gently, "my medications are kept in the bathroom cabinet. They always have been." The silence that followed was thick and unmistakable. Emily looked back and forth between us, her confusion hardening into something colder. "So, let me understand this," she said slowly. "You left our bed at 3 a.m, walked into my father's bedroom while he was asleep, and went through his private dresser looking for medicine you knew was not there." "It is not like that," Ethan said quickly. "Then what is it like?" Emily's voice rose just enough to tremble. "Because from where I am standing, it looks like my husband was going through my father's personal belongings in the middle of the night." Ethan's panic was now impossible to hide. "Emily, you have to understand. I was just trying to help." "Help with what, exactly?" I asked calmly. "What were you hoping to find in that drawer?" His eyes darted between us. The question hung in the air, heavy and unavoidable. He swallowed hard. His glitter-covered hands slowly curled into fists. "Why are you interrogating me like this?" Ethan snapped. "I am your husband." The anger in his voice landed on Emily like a physical blow. She took a slow step backward, and I watched something shift in her expression. the final threads of unquestioning trust beginning to unravel. "You are right," she said quietly. "You are my husband, which is exactly why I am asking you to explain why you are standing in my father's bedroom at 3 in the morning, covered in craft supplies, with your hand inside his private dresser drawer." Ethan looked trapped now, boxed in by the sheer absurdity of his own explanations. Glitter continued to drift from his clothes, settling to the floor like silent testimony. "I can explain everything," he said desperately. "Then do it," Emily replied, folding her arms across her chest. "Because right now I am very confused about what my husband was doing in here." I studied my daughter's face and saw the precise moment her instinct shifted. The moment she stopped trying to protect Ethan and began protecting me. In that instant, she no longer saw this as a misunderstanding. She saw it as a threat. Ethan saw it too. Panic sharpened his voice. "Emily, you have to trust me." But trust, once shattered by lies and glitter, does not rebuild itself. Her eyes never left him. I could see her thinking, replaying weeks of behavior, reinterpreting memories she had once brushed aside. "Ethan," she said slowly, deliberately, "I need you to tell me the truth right now. What were you really doing in my father's bedroom?" He opened his mouth, but before another lie could spill out, I knew it was time. My daughter deserved better than watching him twist himself into more deception. She deserved the truth, even if it hurt. "Emily," I said gently, reaching for my phone on the nightstand, "there is something you need to hear." Ethan's face drained of color beneath the glitter. "Mark, do not." "Do not what?" Emily's voice turned sharp. "Do not what, Ethan?" I found the recording from 2 nights earlier and held the phone up. "Sweetheart, I recorded a phone conversation. I think you should listen to it." "No," Ethan said quickly. "Emily, whatever he thinks he heard—" "Be quiet," she snapped, never taking her eyes off me. "Dad, play it." I pressed play. Ethan's voice filled the room, unmistakable and damning. "Yeah, it is me. Everyone is asleep. The old man is definitely loaded. I found bank statements, investment portfolios, the whole thing. We are talking serious money here." Emily went completely still. Her eyes widened as she listened to her husband casually discuss my finances with someone else. "Tomorrow night, Emily is going to her book club. Every Tuesday, 7 to 9. That gives us perfect timing." "Stop it," Ethan pleaded. "Emily, I can explain." "Shut up," she said quietly, dangerously calm. "Just shut up and let me listen." The recording continued. "I already have the safe key. Took it earlier while they were eating dinner. The old fool keeps everything important in there, cash, jewelry, probably more banking information." Emily's hand flew to her mouth. She stared at Ethan as if she had never truly seen him before. "Look, I know you are worried about the timeline, but my gambling debts are not going away. Those people are not patient." "Gambling debts?" Emily whispered. "What gambling debts?" The audio rolled on relentlessly. "Mark is just some lonely old widower, probably grateful for the company. He has no idea what is coming." I watched my daughter's face break as she heard the way her husband talked about me, how easily he dismissed my humanity, how calmly he calculated my vulnerability. "The best part is he will never suspect family. Even if he notices something missing, Emily will convince him he just misplaced it. You know how old people get about their memory." Emily made a small, broken sound like someone absorbing a physical hit. Her husband had planned to use her trust to cover his theft of her father. "Trust me, By Thursday we will be gone. I will tell Emily we got a job offer out of state, something urgent. We will be gone before the old man knows what hit him." I stopped the recording. The silence afterward was crushing. Emily stared at Ethan, tears streaming down her face. "Gambling debts?" she whispered. "You were going to rob my father?" "Emily, please listen to me." "You called him a lonely old fool," she said, her voice cracking. "You were going to steal from him and then disappear, using me as your cover." Ethan stepped toward her instinctively. She recoiled, backing away as if he were dangerous. "How much?" she demanded. "How much do you owe?" "It does not matter." "How much?" His shoulders slumped. 47,000. Emily's knees buckled. She leaned against the doorframe, staring at the man she had married. "You have been lying to me for months," she said hollowly, "about your job, about our money, about why we really needed to come here. I was trying to protect you. By planning to rob my father," she shouted, "by using me as your alibi while you destroyed the man who raised me." Ethan tried once more. "Emily, we can work this out." "No." She straightened, something unbreakable settling into her posture. "No, we cannot. You planned to victimize my father. You mocked him. You were going to let me believe he was losing his memory while you stole from him." She looked at Ethan with pure disgust. "Get out. Emily, get out of my father's house. Now." For the first time since I had known him, Ethan had nothing left to say. Ethan stood there for another 10 seconds, glitter still drifting from his hair and shoulders like dirty metallic snow. Then something in Emily's expression, pure, unfiltered, protective fury, finally broke through whatever denial he had left. His jaw tightened, and his voice turned sharp and ugly. "This is not over," he snapped. "Half of everything we own is mine. I will get my share." "You mean half of our debt?" Emily replied coldly. "Because that is all we have, Ethan. Debt. Gambling debt I knew nothing about. I will fight you in court." "With what money?" Emily stepped closer to him, and I felt a surge of pride watching her stand her ground. "You just admitted you owe $47,000 to dangerous people. What exactly are you planning to fight me with?" His bravado collapsed. He turned toward me, his eyes hard with resentment. "This is your fault, old man. You turned her against me." "No," Emily said firmly. "You did that yourself. You chose to plan a robbery instead of asking for help. You insulted my father. You lied to me for months." Ethan tried one last angle, his voice suddenly pleading. "Emily, we are married. We made vows." "You broke those vows the moment you planned to commit a felony against my family," she replied. Then she pointed toward the hallway. "Get your things and get out. Now." I watched the realization settle over him. There would be no more manipulation, no more excuses. Emily had heard his own words condemn him. He left the room without another word, trailing glitter through my house like a path of shame. From the guest room, we heard drawers yanked open, clothes stuffed into bags with angry, careless force. Emily sank into the chair beside my bed, looking completely drained. "Dad, I am so sorry," she whispered. "I brought him into your home. I put you in danger." "You could not have known, sweetheart." "I should have seen the signs," she said, shaking her head. "The phone calls, the questions about your money." She looked up at me, eyes filled with tears. "How long have you known?" "Since the night before last," I said gently. "I heard that phone call and realized I had to protect both of us." She let out a weak laugh. The glitter trap was genius. I wanted him caught red-handed, I said, then added softly, or glitter-handed. That earned a real laugh even through her tears. Ethan reappeared in the doorway with 2 overstuffed bags, still sparkling like a defeated party decoration. "Emily, leave your key on the kitchen counter," she said without looking at him. "Do not contact me. My lawyer will contact yours." He opened his mouth, then seemed to realize there was nothing left to say. A minute later, the front door slammed. We sat in silence as we heard his car start and disappear down the street. After a moment, Emily spoke quietly. "Can I stay here, just until I figure things out?" "This is your home for as long as you want it to be," I said without hesitation. 3 months later, I was making coffee when Emily came downstairs, dressed for her new job at the local library. She had settled into morning routines with the same calm precision I had always admired. "Morning, Dad." "Morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" "Like a baby." She poured herself coffee and sat at the table. "Any regrets about the great glitter trap of early spring?" I chuckled. "Only that I did not get a better angle on his face when it went off." Her divorce had been finalized 2 weeks earlier. Ethan had contested nothing. It is difficult to argue over property when you are staring down potential criminal charges and tens of thousands of dollars in gambling debt. "Busy day at the library?" I asked. "Story hour at 10, then helping Mrs. Patterson with genealogy research," she said, smiling. "I love it there. Quiet, peaceful, and full of people who actually appreciate books." She paused at the door. "Thank you, Dad, for protecting me, for handling everything so calmly. Thank you for trusting me when it mattered most." After she left, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and newspaper. The house felt peaceful again. No tension, no lies, no one quietly measuring how to exploit my kindness. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Almost forgot. Mrs. Calder asked if you would help her set up a security system. Apparently word got around about your creative home protection methods." I laughed out loud. Maybe I should patent the glitter approach to security. Outside, spring had settled gently over our quiet Ohio neighborhood. Everything felt normal again, just as it had before Ethan's brief and destructive intrusion into our lives. Sometimes justice comes from courtrooms and police reports. Sometimes it comes from paying attention, setting careful traps, and letting people expose who they truly are. And sometimes justice sparkles.